Hi, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to my weekly podcast about spirituality, love, death, devotion, and waking up while living in a messy world. The Satsang with Shambhavi podcast is recorded live each week with students of our nonprofit community, Jaya Kula. For more information and to find out about attending a satsang, visit jayakula.org. Thanks for listening. Much love to you, wherever and however you are. This tradition says that the point is to feel seamlessly integrated, connected with all others, to feel this sense of what I call total intimacy with life. So it teaches us to look outward, not to collapse inward. Whereas our culture around things that are painful teaches us to collapse inward and to feel that everything is some personal thing that we're experiencing. Your personal pain, your personal psychology, your personal diagnosis. I'm not saying there isn't trauma. It is real. Of course, trauma is real. I'm just saying that the way we apply it to every unpleasant circumstance is really cheating ourselves. It's basically cuts off, in a sense, our ability to grieve and feel righteous anger. And righteous anger is a pathway to action. It's not where we want to end up. It's not like a spiritual accomplishment. But we need to let ourselves feel that, right? We need to let ourselves feel that. It is appropriate. And when we're thinking about how everything's psychologically damaged us and damaged our relationship to our body, and we feel shame, then our ability to feel righteous anger and to really grieve and to feel our commonality with others is very much impaired. Pain, if we just let ourselves feel pain, it is something that really connects us to other people, even to animals, not just people. The experience of pain connects us to others if we don't pathologize it.
Could you talk more about what we're actually doing when we pathologize, like how that pushes the pain away?
Because it gets us into a realm of worrying about ourselves and feeling shame and feeling separate. And grief only comes in a healthy way when we feel compassion and kindness and tenderness towards ourselves. So we can feel sad if we're pathologizing things, right? For sure. And we can feel anxious, but that sort of very healthy outpouring of grief really is reliant on feeling tenderness and compassion for ourselves.
Can there be too long of a period when we're grieving, or that we can get stuck in grieving?
We can get stuck in sadness, for sure. We can get stuck in a kind of mourning, for sure. Just speaking from personal experience, it's not like this is written about in any text or anything, but from personal experience, grief has a cycle that ends. If we really just let it out, it has a cycle that ends. It's like a river. It has sweetness. Grief has sweetness to it. It's hard to describe. It's a very profound experience, but it definitely has an end. Sometimes mourning doesn't. Sometimes sadness doesn't. It becomes a habit pattern. But real grieving is, a very healthy thing. And it is a letting down. Right? It lets the barriers down and we feel more intimacy with others and more relaxation. Grieving brings relaxation in the end.
Do you have a suggestion for grieving, for natural cycles of things, like something lovely is ending and wanting to put that down and let it go?
Well, I don't really think we can let things go. I realized that maybe about 10 years ago after saying, oh yes, let this go. I'm like, what does that even mean? If we could just let things go, my job would be done. Right? Things themselves have a cycle, right? And they go when they want to go. or they go when God says go. They don't go when we want to go. And grief, it's like a dam breaking. Like, it's not something you can plan for. You can have rituals around endings and beginnings, for sure. And that's lovely to do, right? But I guess when I'm speaking of grief, I just mean something that erupts. I don't mean something that we legislate into our lives. All the images of grief that I have are all connected to water. You know, they're all connected to just the natural flow of something that just happens. So I guess to me, it would more just be opening to that, going inside and letting that be felt if it's ready to be felt. In a sense, you have to let yourself be overwhelmed by grief or taken by grief. You can't really have a ritual to feel grief. You can have rituals of goodbye and hello, but yeah.
When you're feeling grief and then you're supposed to do something, often I just do a bad job because I'm trying to hold myself, do the thing, and I can do like one or the other.
Yeah, you can't really do anything if you're really feeling grief. There's kind of two choices. One is to not do the thing, if possible. A lot of us think we have to do this and we have to do that, and we actually don't have to do whatever it is. I mean, it's really interesting to me when people say I have to do something or I can't do something. You know, a lot of times people say that when they don't want to be responsible for their choices. But then sometimes we just are convinced that something is necessary when it's not necessary. And then occasionally something is necessary. But the things that are actually necessary are very, very few and far between. So just think about that and try to give yourself a little more space. And then if you have to, you'll just have to pull yourself together and grieve another time. But I bet there's a lot more room for making a choice to just stay and continue letting things come out.
Can you talk about discipline?
There's two ways of doing discipline, one of which is not good. So brute force discipline is only good for very short periods of time. And if we continue with brute force discipline over a long period of time, and I include in that category discipline that is held up with arguments about how we have to be morally or ethically correct or follow some rules or something, and we're trying to get ourselves to be disciplined by making those kind of arguments to ourselves. If we simply follow discipline in that way for a long period of time, then our practice becomes very dry and unsatisfactory, and we're unhappy, and we might stop. Right? That could happen. The other kind of discipline comes from a recognition of our desire. So, desire for what? That's really going to depend on where we're at in our lives. The whole enterprise of spiritual practice in the United States has somewhat been hijacked by this idea that we'll do practice and then we'll be more relaxed and we'll like settle our vagus nerve and maybe be more productive or something. It's all been, in a sense, subsumed into these concepts that really have nothing to do with what spiritual practice is for. But we could have a desire for that. We could have a desire to feel less anxious and to be more productive and to just enjoy things more in an ordinary way. And that would be a good motivation for discipline. But ultimately, if we're doing this kind of practice more in the way it was intended, what kind of desire are we feeling? We're feeling that primordial desire to find out what the heck's going on here, to reconnect with life, to connect with God, to be immersed in that, or to be feeling more immersed in devotion, or however we feel it. But there's going to be, at some point, a desire that we are in contact with that causes us to be disciplined even when we don't feel like it on some particular day or for some particular month. So that even we can have resistance to practice, or we can feel tired in a way that isn't about being sick, but just feeling ordinary tiredness. Or we can feel angry at God, or we can feel all of these different things. But if we're in touch with that river of desire that is really the voice of wisdom in us, then we're going to apply discipline in a more natural way. We're going to keep going, even if it's hard, but it won't cause us to dry out and become bitter and disappointed. It might be effortful for some period of time, but that effortfulness, if it's actually driven by desire, is going to lead to more spiritual juice, even after a period of it feeling very hard. It's really easy to tell the difference between desire that's driven by moralistic, dogmatic, or self-chastisement or something like that. Even something that's driven by a desire to be spiritually great, if that doesn't eventually break, if that doesn't eventually dissolve, that also will lead to a kind of dryness, and maybe even hot dryness, like brush fires. Natural discipline is driven by desire for whatever, however you feel that at this point, because all desire is really the same. It's just modulated. It's on a spectrum, but it's all coming from the same source. That desire of this alive, aware reality to freely express itself without any hindrances. That's ultimately what is happening, but that desire gets expressed in lots of different ways, including the silliness of some of the stuff that goes on these days. Even those are true desires that can lead to more contact with the desire. But simply trying to apply discipline because you think you're going to be rewarded for being a good girl or boy, that isn't going to take you very far. That will lead to disappointment and bitterness and dryness or boredom. It's very important that we get in touch with the desire for a different kind of life, for being more free, being more expressive, being able to love more, being able to be more intimate with life, being able to know what's happening here, being able to understand really what's going on, and being able to participate in what's going on. Those are the desires that carry us through the rough patches in our practice, the inevitable rough patches.
What would you recommend for somebody who, at times the inquiry is really live, and at times you're kind of burnt yourself out or exhausted yourself or gotten frustrated or life's gotten too busy and complicated? How do you walk that disciplined fine line in these situations?
Well, can we substitute the word explore for inquire? So inquire is something we generally do with our minds, and explore is something we do with all of us, our whole body, energy, and mind. But this is not a practice of inquiry in the sense of doing something with our minds to try to discover something that way. This is something that we're doing experientially that leads to what is called in Trikashaivism samavesha, which means immersion. And the instruction in general in this kind of tradition is to unmind the mind, to not bother with the mind. Mind does mind. We're trying to reconnect with something that's much more alive than what we normally think of as the inquiring mind. So how do we do that? This is what actually carries us through. If we're more experienced practitioners in this kind of tradition, we have been subjected to many forms of what's called transmission. So transmission means that we have some sort of direct experience of the fruit of the practice, or at least an echo of the fruit of the practice. It might not be full on. Now, the main job of the teacher is to facilitate that, but that's not enough. That's a taste or a glimpse. But then that has to be made your own through practice, through doing sadhana. When our body, energy, and mind can perceive the natural state, the state of natural wisdom, in a way that we've decided that we have confidence in it, Right? It's not just something that we're still going, I don't know if that happened or what is happening. We have enough experience with it that we can find our way back there even when we get disconnected from the perception of that. So if you're that far along in your practice, you may feel disassociated, you may feel depressed, you may feel sick, you may feel angry, you may feel angry at God, you may feel all these different things, but you're able to stop and get back into what's called the state of your practice. So you're able to reconnect with living presence pretty much regardless of what condition you're in. That connection is still waxing and waning. It's still coming and going. It's not steady yet, but you're able to find your way back there if you put the effort in. And so that's how you deal with that. If you're not able to do that yet, or you can only do it, every 6 months on an alternate Tuesday, then you, at least at Jaya Kula, you spend more time around the community, you spend more time around the teacher. And then you're in more of a transmission environment that will support you to remember what it is you really want and what your life's about. And maybe even to get you back to being more in touch with presence. So we have all these different tools to do that. The teacher, as one of my teachers once said, is an appliance to help you to do that, to help you reconnect and remember not just who you are, but what you actually want in life. Really, the tools are all there in a tradition like this. You have to pick them up, though. No one can force you to do that. So that's how we handle times when we're feeling disconnected. Satsang with Shambhavi is produced by Jaya Kula, a nonprofit community offering opportunities to learn and practice in the direct realization traditions of Trika Shaivism and Dzogchen. If you enjoyed listening, please help us keep this podcast and many other teachings open to all by making a monthly or one-time donation. Visit jayakula.org to make a donation and explore more of our offerings.